Hello everyone, and happy Friday to you. My name is Amy Strickland. I'm with ELK Products Tech Support and also serve in our marketing department as well. We're going to be presenting a webinar for you today on our two-way wireless products. So we're going to go over the technology itself and dive into each one of the products so that you know everything that you need to know to start working with this product line or to continue working with it if you're just looking for maybe some extra tips and hints and you've been using two-way. Great. Hopefully you'll still get something beneficial out of this information that we're going to be presenting. With me today is Brad Weeks, who is the manager of our tech support department, and he's going to be presenting at the second half of the webinar. So we're happy to have Brad with us here today.
Good afternoon, everyone.
So during the webinar, we certainly encourage you to ask as many questions as you need to, and there's a questions box in your GoToWebinar control panel on the right side of your screen that will allow you to type those questions into us. We'll get through just as many of them as we can during the webinar. We're also going to have a Q&A at the end of the webinar, so we'll get to just as many of those questions as we can. We may, for time restraints or just the nature or the subject of your question, may need to provide an answer and a follow-up, and we'll be sending you a follow-up email that would go out to you on Monday, and so you'll find your questions will be answered there if they're not answered during the session. So definitely ask those questions, and we will get those answered for you. So let's just talk a little bit about the wireless products that are out in the market today. There's a ton of different manufacturers that make wireless products, and even our M1 system has been able to work with other manufacturers' wireless before we had our own, and we continue to maintain support for those systems. But the problem with some of the conventional wireless products is the technology that they're using is outdated, and they're not making use of some of the newer technologies and encryption to keep hackers from being able to hack into the wireless and disable it or jam the wireless signal so that they effectively disable the wireless signal. So again, it's lack of encryption, not authenticating signals, sending signals over a fixed frequency that makes it very predictable where to listen for those signals and try to jam them, and also just not having any type of jamming detection can make some of the conventional wireless products that are on the market just not as safe and secure as you would like them to be, especially since they are security products. So we want them to be as secure as possible. So ELK, seeing this when we wanted to come out with our own wireless, we didn't want to do what everyone else had done. We wanted to take it to the next level and have a truly secure wireless solution, and so that's what we've done with our two-way wireless. So one of the big differences between two-way wireless and one-way wireless is the two-way communication. And so the old way of doing things, you had a receiver that was somehow connected or talking to your main control panel. It's basically just out there just listening. It can't really communicate with the sensors at all. It's just listening for signals to come from the sensors. And so the sensors then also can't really listen for signals. All they can do is when something needs to be sent out, they basically repeat it over and over and over again, just blast out the signal and hope that at least one of them gets through. So you don't really have any acknowledgement there. One doesn't know that the other got the signal or that the signal was sent. It's just, again, you got your blast and hope kind of method there. Two-way's different in that the transceiver unit, or in this case the piece that would be replacing the receiver, and the sensor, they can have kind of a conversation. So the door opens, the sensor says hey, I'm open over here. The receiver says, okay, I got that message. That allows the signals to be much more reliable because you're getting that acknowledgement, but it also lets the transmitter stop sending signals, so it doesn't have to do this multiple blast. It sends a signal, waits for an acknowledgement. If it gets it, it stops sending, so it's also more efficient with your battery power because it's not just blasting out multiple signals. So again, just kind of going back over some of the advantages here. Maybe I haven't hit on all of these, but I know I've already touched on a few of them. You have enhanced security and reliability when you have your encrypted transmissions. You're not on a fixed frequency, so you're hopping around in the different frequencies all the time. You're not going to be able to lock onto that, and you have the jamming detection, and that just really makes the wireless communications much more secure. By getting signal acknowledgement from every sensor, you're also increasing that reliability, and you're helping to save on your battery life. Another thing that two-way does is allow us to have some products that do things a little bit differently than some other wireless products on the market, like our Keyfobs, for instance. They have feedback LEDs, and other Keyfobs have LEDs, but it's just basically to show you that you did press the button. But our LEDs and our Keyfobs actually tell you that the thing that you wanted to happen happened. So that's, you know, a great indicator. But also we have an inquiry button, and that gives you on-demand status information. So if there is an active alarm, your Keyfob's going to blink a red LED, and so, you know, then maybe you don't want to go into the building. It may be unsafe, so that can definitely be a benefit to your clients to avoid those unsafe situations. Our indoor motions have a security convenience LED that can be controlled through rules as well as some other predetermined functions, and so that again is just enhancing your safety and security. We also have a few features for you installers to make your lives easier in putting these products in. So with our bi-color LEDs on the sensors, you're going to be able to see when you trip a sensor, you get a green LED. That means that that signal is acknowledged. You don't have to, you know, go try to, you know, figure out whether or not from a keypad or, you know, other kind of type of logging data, whether or not the sensor actually, you know, was heard by the receiver. You're going to have that visual confirmation right at the sensor. Also, to make things easier for you, you can initiate walk test mode from the keypad, so you don't have to climb a ladder to walk test one of the, say, a motion detector. You're going to be able to put the system in walk test mode. That motion is going to respond, and that bright white LED is going to come on so that across the room you'll be able to tell for sure that that motion detector was tripped. It also has the green LED to show the acknowledgement. Another product that has some neat features are smoke detectors. They have built-in sounders, and those sounders can be wirelessly interconnected through the M1 system through the two-way wireless. So if one smoke detector goes off, it's going to cause all of the other smoke detectors to sound. That also applies to like your F key. If you say you have a fire alarm activated from an F key, that's also going to activate the sounders on your smoke. So any fire alarm is going to cause your smoke sounders to go off. You don't have to do any kind of hardwiring of sounders to meet these new fire codes that require this synchronized sounding. So I kind of hit on a few of the products there, but here's the product line as it is now. We've got our transceiver units, glass break sensors, smoke detectors, key fobs, recessed door window sensors, slimline door window sensors, mini window sensors, indoor motion detectors. We also have a universal 3-zone. That's going to give you a magnetic, you know, a reed switch, as well as 2 loops for hardwired sensors. 2 products that are new. We've had panic buttons in the past, but our panic button is now new and improved. It has a better look. It has a replaceable battery, so that's something we just recently came out with. And we also now have an outdoor PIR. We partnered with Optex to make use of their phenomenal PIR technology and incorporated our two-way wireless into that. So you've got, you know, a great detection product with very reliable wireless communication. So that's a new product that we've recently come out with that we're really excited about. So let's dive into the installation part of things a little bit more here. So we'll just start out by talking about transceiver location. You want to have that as centralized as possible so that you get the most coverage out of the transceiver unit. So in a residential installation, you know, if you can get it in the center of the home, that's good. If it's a a moderate-sized home, you may only need one transceiver unit to cover that. But if it is a larger home, or say it's a commercial installation where you just have more area to cover, we offer a wireless transceiver that it's specific for multiple installations, and you can have up to 4 of those, so that can help expand your coverage area. But again, you want to kind of have that in centralized areas so that you can get the most out of the receiver. Having it up against an exterior wall is not going to give you the best coverage that you could get out of that transceiver unit. So talking a little bit more specifically about the transceivers that we offer, for the two-way wireless, there's 2 different options, and again, one's for single transceiver installations, the other's for multiple. And the two-way wireless capacity of wireless zones is 144 zones, and that is regardless of whether you're using the TW or the TWM unit. It's 144 max wireless zones. These transceiver units connect to the M1 data bus. That's through a 4-wire connection directly to the M1, or can go through one of our data bus hubs if you're using that hub and you have more than 2 runs on the M1. We do not recommend mixing these 2 transceiver units. So if you do have an installation that requires multiple transceivers, you want to get the M version for all of your transceivers. And again, you can have up to 4 of those. Now, just some things that you need to know when you're going to install this product. It does have to be set to address 2 for that first unit. Whether it's the TW or the TWM, it has to be address 2. So that's something that if it's a new installation, it's pretty easy to work around that. But if it is an existing installation and you're adding two-way to it, you want to make note of this very important fact that you have to have it on address 2. And that may mean that you need to move some hardwired zones if you already have an expander on the system to accommodate your wireless. But definitely be aware of that, because if you set it to a different address, it's not going to work correctly. If you have the multiple unit, the multiple transceiver unit, the M version, they need to be sequential. First one at 2, 3, 4, 5 from there. Those are the only valid addresses for the M1XRF TWM is 2, 3, 4, and 5. And no hardwired zones can be installed in the groups occupied by the transceiver. The transceiver unit does have some LED indicators on the front of it. When it is properly installed and working correctly, you should have a steady blink of the status LED, and then you'll see the RF and valid LEDs blink in response to transmitters sending signals into the transceiver. Looking at the inside of this unit, you can see that you have your standard 4 position screw terminals for your data bus connection, your 12-volt positive, data A, data B, and negative. There is a terminating jumper for the data bus, and again, this is standard on all data bus-based devices. You're going to have a way to terminate that device if it's on the end of the run, and so you can see that JP1 jumper is for that termination. There is a data bus activity LED just above the screw terminals, and you're just going to see a lot of rapid blinking on that LED. That's totally normal for that LED just to blink very rapidly. It's just showing you all of the data bus activity. Again, the status LED on the other side of the board, you should just get like 1 blink per second. That one should just be a steady heartbeat. If you see that LED on solid, that's probably an indication that the receiver is not enrolled correctly, so you can try enrollment. If it doesn't enroll, then you'll want to check your data bus connections and make sure everything's in good shape there. The valid LED will blink green when a learn sensor is activated, and the amber LED will also blink in that case. The amber LED blinks anytime it detects RF traffic. There are dip switches to set the data bus addresses, and again, the only valid addresses are 2, 3, 4, and 5, and that would apply to the TWM unit. As you can see on the picture here, we have a TW unit, and so the only valid address for that unit is 2. All of the indicators that you're seeing on this unit you would also see on the M unit. They're going to look pretty much exactly the same except for the notation of the M. So when connecting this transceiver to the M1 data bus, you're following all of the same guidelines that you would follow for any data bus device. You can use 4-conductor wiring directly to the M1. Say if you have a small installation, you've got one keypad and you've got the transceiver unit and that's all it's going to be on the data bus, and you can just wire it as shown here on the screen where you're basically paralleling those two runs into the M1. It can also be part of a daisy chain run to maintain that 2-run maximum. And your total wire run on the data bus, cumulative, cannot exceed 4,000 feet. And again, these things apply to all of the data bus devices. They apply to these transceivers just like the keypads and hardwired expanders. You may also find yourself needing to connect this to a data bus hub, and so I have an example here of our standard data bus hub, the one that takes the RJ45 termination Cat5 type wiring. So you can see with that hub you don't have to terminate at any of the devices. You're terminating with the plug in the hub, so that eliminates the need for you to have the JP1 jumper installed on the transceiver. And you are going to have to wire it in to those screw terminals using 6 of the 8 conductors in that Cat5 cable. And notice that we're doubling up on the data line, so green and orange going into data A, white, green, white, orange going into data B, and then you're using your solid brown for your 12-volt positive, white, brown for your negative. So let's talk a little bit about the products themselves, and we'll start with the Keyfob, which is the ELK 6010. This Keyfob allows you to arm and disarm the system. You can activate panics, you can check the system status, and you can also program the buttons to do various things that you might want to do, like open a door, turn on a light, or activate a task, that sort of thing. Those button assignments are programmed in the M1 through the ELK software. You can set those up very easily. It can also be done from the keypad, but by default your arm disarm are already set up, and the status inquiry button, while you can have that button perform another function by programming through the ELK software, you can't take the inquiry feature off of that button. So the way that works is, a press on that button for say like a second or so is going to give you your inquiry of your status, and you'll get that LED information. If you do have, say, that button programmed to do another function, let's say you want to activate a task or open your garage door, you're going to press and hold that button for 4 seconds to activate the M1 programmed assignment to that button. The battery in this unit is replaceable. It is one of the coin style, like I think it's a 2032, if I'm remembering correctly. It's a standard coin style type battery that you can just basically, there's a place on the unit where you can pop in like a blade screwdriver and get the unit popped apart to switch the battery out. Now the battery life should be several years, so that's not something you should have to worry about, but we have changed quite a while back our Keyfob design where we had one that you couldn't replace the battery on with one that you can, because we do feel like that is a good thing for the longevity of the product. So likewise, we made similar changes to our panic button. I feel like we've made it much more attractive than the previous version, so that's one plus, is that you've got a nicer looking unit. We've also added the replaceable battery feature to this unit as well. And it has a red LED feedback indicator, and so again, if you press the button and you have it set to activate a medical alarm, for example, you're going to get that red LED indication that medical alarm actually occurred. And it does come with a water resistant lanyard, so that's got a type of clasp on it that's going to break away would it need to. One thing that I didn't mention on the 6010, but it applies to the 6010 and the 6011 here that we're looking at, is the supervision type. So when you're setting this up in wireless setup in the ELK software or through the keypad, these two units, the 6010 Keyfob and the 6011 Panic, need to be set for not supervised. They're meant to be carried around and taken out of the range of the M1. Say if you have the Keyfob, for example, and you've got that on your keychain, you go to work, you're obviously probably not going to be within range of the M1 transceiver any longer, and so if you don't have it set correctly in the supervision option, you'll get a lost transmitter. So definitely make note of that. Key fobs and panic buttons need to be set to not supervised. We have a slimline door window sensor. This is a very thin, or thin, maybe skinny kind of transmitter that's going to be really good for narrow door and window jams. We offer that in white, which is the 6020, and in brown, which is the 6020 BR. It is a built-in reed switch. You do have a front and back tamper option, and that's a little piece that you can install. You can kind of see there, we've pointed it out in the image, the actuator that you can install, and the back plate actually works for a front cover and a back plate tamper. Your minimum operating gap on this particular sensor is 1/2 inch, which is pretty generous. And we use a half-size AA battery on this unit, a 3.6 volt lithium battery. And so again, you just want to make sure when you're putting the battery in that you observe polarity. On the units, you will either find marking on the circuit board, marking on the housing, or both to indicate the polarity of the battery. And all of the units have a label on them with the TXID number so that you can very quickly and easily set that up in the ELK software. The next unit that we want to talk about is our mini window sensor, and this one is a super thin sensor. So it's really good for double hung encasement style wood and vinyl windows. We offer that in white and brown. It's also a built-in one reed switch, and your operating gap there, as you can see, is 3/8. This one takes the CR2032 style battery, the coin style battery, just like the key fobs and the panic buttons I was talking about earlier. And you want the positive up on that. And again, there's a graphic on the label to help you make sure that you get the polarity correct, as well as the ID number for easy learning in through ELK. Now this one, again, we only recommend this unit for windows, and specifically wood and vinyl windows, because it is so thin. It's very close to the mounting surface, and so that does have an effect on the range of the unit. You will find that this one has less range than the other units that we offer. We recommend that this particular transmitter be within 100 feet of the transceiver unit. And we kind of hit on this a minute ago, but we do offer the 3-zone sensor. That's the 6022. This is a great sensor if you have a situation where you don't need to have, or you can't have the transmitter actually mounted on the surface, and maybe you need to run a wire for a garage door, if you're going to be covering like multiple doors, windows, maybe some French doors or something. Maybe you just don't want to see the transmitter unit right at the door. So you can wire into this. There's 2 different loops that you can wire into. That's loop 1 and loop 3, and they're labeled as such on the board. It also does have a built-in reed switch if you need to use it that way, and you can use all 3 of these with this one sensor. Can be learned into 3 zones, so you can make use of all 3 of the zones on it. It also has the actuator for the front and back tamper option, and the 1/2 inch operating gap. So again, looking inside this unit, again noting the battery polarity, and again that's going to actually be in the back housing. You'll see those markings, as well as on the circuit board you can see the positive here. So just make sure you're putting the batteries in correctly. You can see that little blown up picture here. You've got a negative shared between your loop 1 and your loop 3. So those are your 2 external contact options. And so if you want to have this set up for normally closed sensors, then you don't really need to select any special options in programming. But if you want it to be a normally opened loop, then you are going to have to select option 2 in wireless setup. So that's how you specify with this sensor that it's normally open, is by selecting option 2. You do not select option 2 if you want it normally closed. For cases when you really want to conceal the sensor, we do have the recessed door sensor. Again, great for wooden vinyl doors. Has a built-in tamper switch. When you remove the cover, it's automatically activated the tamper. It's easy to change out the battery on the unit. You can just like pull the cap off, and you'll see that in the next slide how that works, but it makes it really easy to change out the battery. It mounts in a 3/4 inch drill hole and has a 3/4 inch operating gap. We offer that in white and brown as well. So you can see in this illustration how the cover just kind of pops out of the main housing, and the circuit board's sitting aligned in some notches there. Easy to pull that out and insert the battery, noting the polarity with the negative against the spring. Has the ID for easy learning in, and you can see also there is a micro tamper switch which is engaged by the cover. I'm going to take a moment here just to answer a few questions, and then I'm going to turn the presentation over to Brad. So I had a question here about no hardwired zones installed in the same group, asking for an explanation of that. So what we're saying is that you can have 144 wireless zones, but obviously you might have that on a small one that's not like a large area. You may have a bunch of zones and you only have the one transceiver, or even if you have multiple transceivers, they're not going to occupy all of the addresses. So let's say you have 2 transceivers, you've got that at address 2 and address 3, but you have multiple groups of wireless zones. Let's say you had 4 groups of wireless zones. Well, then say your groups are 2, 3, 4, and 5. You're not going to be able to have any hardwired zones in group 4 or 5, for example. You can't set an M1XIN to those addresses, even though nothing else on the data bus actually occupies the addresses, the wireless occupies it. So hopefully that's clearer than it was before and not more confusing. I know that can be a bit confusing with your wireless, receivers only occupying a 16 block address, but you may have a lot more wireless zones than just the 16. So as you're adding those wireless groups, you're taking up those addresses even though there's not a data bus device there. So when you're working with the external contacts on the 6022, we are not looking for any end-of-line resistors on those loops. So it's either just a closed loop or an open loop, and again you select that with your option 2 whether or not it's on or off. The recessed door sensor is 2.5 inches long. Someone was asking about the depth of the hole that you drill there, so that length on that housing is 2.5 inches. Someone asked if the key fob was going to require reprogramming after changing the battery. No, it does not. Okay, so if you have other questions, keep those coming in. We'll go over questions again closer to the end of the presentation, but to keep things moving, I'm going to go ahead and turn it on over to Brad, who's going to tell you about some more products and go over some other installation tips.
All right, certainly do appreciate that, Amy. Good job. Right now we want to talk about the ELK interior motion detector, our ELK 6030. Now we offer that in a pet immune version too, called the ELK 6030P. Once again, it has a courtesy LED built into it, a nice bright white LED. Has the bicolor LED to indicate whether or not the signal got through to the transceiver or not. If it turns red, the signal did not get acknowledged by the transceiver. If it turns green, the signal got through. It also has a creep zone or a look down zone under the PIR. Very important to make sure this is set to loop 2 in programming. But the Courtesy LED can be used in a variety of different things. First of all, it can be used in the walk test mode. When in walk test mode and you pass in front of the motion detector, the LED will momentarily turn on. You can use it during alarms as a flashing indication. It can be programmable and activated through the ELK RP rule engine as well. So it's a very nice feature in a very nice looking interior motion detector. Bear with me one second. There we go. Inside view of the motion detector, dip switches which select the pulse count, the range, the sleep cycle, and so forth. Whether or not the acknowledgement LED turns on or off, those are all for your benefit. If you decide there's a certain feature you don't want, you can obviously disable that feature. Now this particular detector does take 2 of the 3-volt lithium batteries, the CR123As. And if you'll notice in the diagram, they are mounted the same way. One is for the LED, one's for the actual motion detector. We offer several different ways to mount this detector, one being surface mount, wall mount with no bracket, the other with the standard swivel that's included, and we also offer what we call our deluxe 90-degree swivel bracket. It is sold separately, and you have your part number there in the parentheses. On the back of the sensor, we've included the TXID number, and that's the serial number of the sensor that's necessary to learn the sensor into the RP programming. Now you can learn it in through RP, which is very convenient, or you can manually learn it in through Keypad programming. We'll talk a little more about that later. But this is our interior motion detector, our ELK 6030, once again available in a regular and a pet immune version. Let's talk a little about the activation through the rules. So when we turn output 4 on in programming, this allows us to control that courtesy LED we're talking about. So the light turns on for about 17 seconds when motion is activated. For example, you could use it as a night light. In the flash mode, which is output 5, you can have it flash for about 30 seconds. It's a good visual indication. Say for instance when the phone is ringing, we have a nice example of a rule to the right of that. When output 6 is on, you can turn on solid, once again for about 17 seconds, maybe perhaps during the entry delay. So if you look at our rules, whenever the time is 15 minutes after sunset, we turn the output 4 on. And whenever sunset, we turn output, I'm sorry, I got them backwards. So whenever 15 minutes after sunset, we turn the output on, and then whenever sunrise, we turn the output off. So the LED is only going to come on when it's dark outside. Whenever the telephone is ringing, then we can turn output 5 on, and when output 5 turns on, should turn the courtesy LED on solid, and we have it turn it on for 38 seconds. Whenever the home entry delay starts and it's dark outside, turn output 6 on. That's going to turn it on for about and turn that LED on solid. Now one thing to remember because of the two-way communication, it may not be an instantaneous on when the rule activates. It may take about 8 seconds for that signal to go out, to go out from the two-way transceiver to the motion detector, and the motion detector acknowledge it. So it may take about 8 seconds, but then the rest of the time follow, and then it'll turn off automatically. All right, I want to talk about a new product that we just released here recently. It's our new outdoor motion detector. It's the ELK 6032, and this is built upon the Optex outdoor motion detector, and this delivers very stable and dependable detection in severe outdoor environments. It is a dual PIR, has a lot of nice features such as adjustable sensitivity and range, has a battery saving feature. like it is compatible with our ELK Two-Way Wireless, so it has that extended battery life capability. Transmits tamper and low battery troubles. And just like most of our other sensors, the loop needs to be set to 2 in programming. If we take the cover off, we'll see inside the unit, and like I said, if anyone's ever seen the Optex motion, it's a very nice, very well-built motion detector. And what we've done is we've taken one of our two-way wireless boards and married it into the back of the sensor. It does require 2 3-volt lithium batteries. There's several dip switches on that particular board which do not need to be adjusted, and we've outlined those there in red. These do not need to be changed. They are factory set. And of course we give you the TX ID number for convenience of programming this particular sensor into ELK-RP. Some more features of the ELK outdoor motion detector. Basically the only one that you'll really need to adjust is probably the battery saving dip switch. That's this one here. There's the height adjustment capabilities, angle adjustment capabilities, and so forth. These are all outlined in the Optex installation instructions, and you can download those for full details on what each one of those will allow you and what features it does give you. This is a very nice motion detector for outdoors. Now moving on, let's talk about the ELK glass break sensor. This is the ELK 6040. Once again, this is a product that we've married our ELK Two-Way Wireless technology into, and it listens for the actual patterns of glass breaking using a pattern recognition technology. Has about a 20-foot by 360-degree range. Needs to be about 4 feet from the glass. The loop needs to be set to 2. It does incorporate the ELK bicolor LED on the circuit board. Might be a little hard to see the LED with the cover on. The LED is located right about there, and it's you might be able to see it through the cover if it's slightly dark in the room, but with the cover off you can most definitely see it. So you know that the signal got through to the transceiver. Requires one CR123A battery. We've given you the TX ID number for convenience. And this is what the unit looks like when it's fully assembled. It has the omnidirectional microphone, and it does have a red LED to indicate when it is picking up noise. Now this is when the sensor is picking up noise, not that it actually got received by the transceiver. That's 2 separate LEDs in this scenario. Another product in our ELK Two-Way Wireless line is our ELK 6050 smoke detector. Now we call it a sound all smoke detector. It does have built-in heat sensors. And the reason we call it a sound all is because it does have a sounder built into it. And if one of the wireless sensors goes off, one of the wireless smoke sensors goes into alarm, sends a signal to the transceiver then sends a signal to the rest of the 6050s that are enrolled in the system, and they all start to sound. That's a great feature that I'm not sure anyone else in the industry has at this time. Also, if the M1 goes into alarm, meaning a function key or maybe a hardwired smoke detector, a regular 4-wire smoke detector on a zone goes into alarm, the M1 goes into fire alarm, it'll then send the signal to the 6050 so that they all start sounding. So it's a great built-in feature. It's a loud 85 decibel sounder. Built-in heat sensor with a rapid rise temperature detection. It is UL listed. Very important to set the loop to 2 and the supervision, the wireless supervision, to 3 equals fire supervision. It's going to check supervision a little more frequently than with a regular Berg zone. We have an alarm status LED. We have the built-in sounder, a heat sensor, a test and silence button built into the unit. Taking a look at the interior of the detector, takes 2 of the 3-volt lithium batteries, the CR123As. The label includes the TXID number. Sometimes it might be hard to get the sensors and the base plate to line up, so we give you an indication there where the two should meet so that you can get them connected together. Nice feature also is it is not, you can't get the sensor onto the base plate without the batteries installed. So makes it nice and convenient to not accidentally forget to put the batteries in the sensors. All right, so Amy, any questions about the sensors we've gone over so far? The new outdoor motion, the glass break?
We did have a couple of questions here. So someone asked about the IP rating of the outdoor sensor, which my understanding is that is a rating that determines the severity or whatever of the environment that the sensor can withstand. And the IP rating on the 6032 is IP55. We also had someone ask if there will be an exterior rated enclosure for the transceiver. At this time, I'm not aware of any plans to make a exterior rated enclosure for that transceiver unit. It does need to be connected to the M1 system through the data bus, and all of those devices are really interior rated devices. So if you're going to be using the outdoor motion detectors, this is one of those scenarios where you may find it beneficial to have multiple transceivers so that you have good coverage inside as well as some coverage outside to pick up that outdoor motion. Another question that we had here, do the wireless as well as the hardwired zones send independent point IDs to the panel and central station? Each sensor, whether it be a wireless sensor here or a hardwired zone, has an independent zone number, and so when the M1 is logging events based on that sensor and also reporting, it does provide its zone number that's assigned to it. And so even if you're looking at, say, like the 6022, which can be 3 zones, you're going to be able to identify which part of that sensor by zone number actually went into alarm. So it does have that independent identification of each zone.
Very good, excellent. All right, so let's talk a little about sensor enrollment and some setup options. Now, there's 2 ways to learn in wireless sensors into the M1 system. Number 1 being keypad programming, and second through the RP software. RP software is very, very intuitive and easy to use, and we give you the TXID numbers. So for most applications, if possible, it probably would be very, very quick and easy and beneficial to be sitting at your computer, simply entering the data. Once it's sent to the control, that sensor's learned in, so it's ready to go at that point. Very important to remember when programming through the keypad to make sure RP2 is not connected to the system to prevent any issues there. So if we're going to enroll manually from the keypad, the first thing we'd want to do, now depending on the keypad, the screenshot here is for our LCD keypads. They can also be learned in through the M1KP navigator. Screens are a little different, but it's a pretty easy flow to follow through the navigator. First thing, we'd press the ELK key, and this is the screen that comes up. It's number 1, view control and automation functions. We'd want to go into number 9, installation programming. We press the right arrow key, we get the prompt for authorization required. This is your installer level programming code. By default, that is 172839. Once in number 9 installation programming, the first menu that comes up is 01 bus module enrollment. Now after you want to make sure that your bus devices are enrolled. That includes the two-way wireless transceiver, so you may want to do the enrollment beforehand. Once the enrollment is done, let's go to menu 14, which is wireless setup. Simply enter 14, or you can use the up arrow key to scroll up to menu 14. We press the right arrow key. The first item there is receiver options. Well, that's pretty much already set up for us, so we're going to go into number 3, which is learn wireless transmitter. Now when we enter into menu 3, our first wireless zone, or W zone, is number 17, 017. The HW after that would indicate Honeywell, not hardwired. That's Honeywell. And that's for a different webinar where we might talk about the integrating with the Honeywell wireless, which you could enter their serial number by pressing the left arrow key at this point. But right now we're going to talk about enrolling the ELK Two-Way Wireless. So when we're at the screen, W zone equals 017, transmitter to learn, we'll press the right arrow key, and let's say for instance we're going to learn in our smoke detector. We'll insert the batteries into the detector. The keypad should chime, and you should hear a voice acknowledgement that sensor is learned, and the system will automatically advance to the next zone. Now if you don't want to learn in another sensor, we need to exit from programming. You can press the ELK key to end the rapid enrollment. Otherwise, if another wireless sensor were tripped, it would get learned into the next zone, zone 18 at this point. So we've learned in our 6050 smoke detector. Once it learns in, a serial number will pop up in the field. This time we do want to press the left arrow key, because that now takes us to the second line, and this is our serial number of our sensor. I'm right here. This is the actual TXID number off of the sensor. We need to set the loop equal to 2, with the exception of the 6022, which is a 3-zone sensor. Most all of the ELK regular wireless sensors will have a loop equal 2. So we press the left arrow key. That drops us down to here. We'll press the right arrow key. That'll put the cursor under the 0. Simply press 2 to change it to 2. And then we can press the ELK key to save the change. Press the ELK key again. That backs you up a menu. That takes you back to number 3, wireless to learn. Now we want to go to option 2. So we press the 2 key. This is transmitter options. Press the right arrow key to enter into the menu. You can kind of see it's prompting you. So we're here, program, press the right arrow. We get to zone 17, we want to program, we press the right arrow key. We're now at zone 17, enabled transmitter. The transmitter is enabled, it equals yes, it means it's been learned in. We go up arrow to option 2, normal supervision, depends on the sensor. If it's a regular Berg zone, normal supervision is fine. A fire zone, we want fire supervision, or number 3. Keyfob would be 0. not supervised, and that includes the ELK 6010 and 6011 fobs, because like Amy said earlier, if you take that with you to work, it's out of range of the transceiver, you're going to get a lost transmitter on your keypad, and it's going to log that. So we've set our supervision for 3 equals fire. Press the ELK key to save the change, and then you can press the ELK key to exit out of programming, and that sensor is learned into the system. Now through RP programming, just as easy. If you're in ELK RP, you've created your wireless group 2, so you right click on zone inputs, you would create wireless group 2, which is zones 17 through 32. We would double click on zone 17 to expand it open full screen. You can assign a name. The definition is 10 fire alarm. The type will be 5 for fire/RF. Set the area. If you want a voice description, that's fine. We can include a voice description. The next thing you'd want to do is click Wireless Setup. Under the Wireless Setups tab, we want to make sure we click Enable. We set our fire supervision to 3. You'll enter your TX-ID number off of the sensor and set your loop. Click Save and then Send to Control, and that sensor is learned in. So either through keypad programming or through the ELK RP2 software, very simple to learn in a wireless sensor. Now we want to test our sensor now. So once it's learned in, we're going to go into the walk test mode. And to do so, at the keypad, press the ELK key. The first screen will come up as number 1, View Control Automation Functions. Press the 3 key to access the walk test menu. Press the right arrow key, and it's going to show you out of the total number of zones programmed in the system, which in this case is 32, so far none of them have been tripped yet. So you press the right arrow key, and now you can go to wireless zones, or any zone for that matter, trip the zone, the M1 will speak, and you'll see that number increment each time that you trip a zone. So in case of the smoke detector, we're going to press and hold the test button on the smoke detector, and you should hear an acknowledgement that the sensor was tested, and now we have 1 of 32 sensors tested. Let's look at a wireless zone for security, or for more than just security rather. So let's say we're setting up zone 18, and we have it configured as a non-alarm. Now when it's configured as non-alarm, it's just that. It's more or less for automation purposes, but it's not going to cause any type of alarm sounding, reporting to central station, things of that nature. So this is good for maybe controlling lights when doors are opened, or using a zone to control a thermostat. Right, so some benefits of the two-way, ELK Wireless two-way. It's more secure and reliable than conventional wireless because it is encrypted. It's frequency hopping. It's never the same frequency at the same time. It's a 902 to 928 megahertz frequency hopping type technology. It's harder to jam and hack a constantly changing frequency. Saves time on setup because we give you the nice convenient LED indication when the signal is received by the transceiver. The walk test mode for your motions and allows you to not have to keep running up and down that ladder. Meets new fire codes without non-hardwired sounders. Has the ELK 6050 has the built-in sounder. Battery saving capabilities, because once it's transmitted and acknowledged, it doesn't repeat that signal over and over like some traditional wireless sensors. Well, they'll send 8 rounds of data information at one time, and hopefully it gets through. The ELK Two-Way Wireless sends, gets the acknowledgement, and it's done. All right, questions at this point?
Yeah, we have a few here, so I'm just going to
Okay.
help us go through them here. So we have a couple of different questions that have been asked a few different ways, but the same basic question that's coming in is about the coverage area and the range. So can you talk a little bit about range and how that varies with
Sure.
sensors and how
Okay.
to decide your coverage area?
Right. The question comes up quite frequently, and now open air line of sight is a lot better range than when it's inside construction material, because construction material, and it depends on the construction material as to whether or not what type of signal range you're going to get. Open air line of sight, 300 to 400 feet, probably not a problem. Once you start figuring in drywall, metal ductwork, stainless steel appliances, stone, concrete, rebar, that can really degrade a signal, whether it be an ELK Wireless, GE, Honeywell, even your phones. I'm sure everyone's walked into a building, all of a sudden you lose cell phone service. So it's kind of hard to put a definitive number on the range. It really depends on the environment that the two-way wireless is going into. With the status LED built into our sensors, you can actually mock up a simple system with just a receiver sitting there, and you can go from area to area in the home or business, trip the sensor, wait for the status LED. If it turns green, status got through. If it turns red, it didn't get through. So therefore you may need to add an additional transceiver to increase the coverage area. The walk test mode gives you a level from 1 to 8, with 8 being the highest, 1 being the lowest. So as a good rule of thumb, anything from 5 to 8 would be considered a good signal strength. So once again, if you're in walk test mode and you go to a certain area in the home, you trip it, you get the green, it says 6, it's a good signal strength. But if you get green and it says 2, well, yeah, it got through, but it's a low-level signal. So once again, it got through, but you may need an additional transceiver. So I hope that answers the question. It really depends on the environment. Open air line of sight, we've gotten 300 to 400 feet.
Yeah, and that 300 to 400 feet applies to the majority of sensors, but it doesn't apply to all of them. And as we were going through, I think I pointed out on the mini window, just because of the way that that sensor is made and how thin it is and how close it's going to be to the mounting surface, that also factors in. So that one's around, I think around 100 feet is what they say. And I mean,
Yep.
that the mounting surface can affect any wireless sensor. So you definitely don't want to be mounting wireless sensors that are, magnetic based on metal. So you definitely want to avoid that. But there are other mounting surfaces besides metal that can have an effect on that. So environment, as Brad said, is huge, and it can also vary depending on the type of sensor that you're working with.
Absolutely.
Another question that we got here was about a Nest carbon monoxide detector. Currently ELK does not interface with any Nest products, whether that be the carbon monoxide or the smoke that they have. And of course we went in pretty good detail about the smoke that we offer. We've gotten a number of requests for a carbon monoxide to be added to the two-way line, and we hear you. We're working on that. I don't have any details on when that will be available, but I can tell you that our engineers are working on a carbon monoxide for our two-way line, so that will be coming sometime in the future. I just can't tell you any more than that at this time. Let's see, can you use the ELK-RP software on a laptop connected to the panel at the job site? Absolutely. You can use the ELK software on your laptop and connect it directly to the serial port on the M1. If you have a serial port on the laptop, or more commonly, you're going to be using a USB to serial converter cable. If the system is networked through our M1 XCP Ethernet interface or our C1M1 dual path communicator, you can connect to it over the network as well on site. So you can definitely use that software to easily learn those sensors in. And Brad went through and showed us it's really not that complicated to learn it in either way, but you could definitely see the benefits of the software and being able to just check a few boxes and make a few selections from drop downs, as opposed to navigating through numerous menus on the keypad. So while the keypad is fairly easy, the software's that much easier, so definitely make use of it. And our programming software is available for download on our website. That's elkproducts.com. You do need to log into the website to download that software, so if you don't already have one and you're looking at getting the ELK software, you definitely want to go ahead and request that as soon as possible, because we do have to manually process those requests, so it's not going to be an instant turn on. We usually try to get those processed same day for you, especially if your company information is easy to verify. It's pretty easy to get those same day, but just don't expect that to be as soon as you sign up you're going to have access to it, because we are manually processing those. So request that sooner rather than later, so that you don't run into any problems. I think you kind of covered on this a little bit, Brad, but if you could just maybe reiterate the RF signal strength and walk test and how you get that information.
Okay, sure. The sensors have they send out data packets, and up to, like, the Honeywell and the GE, they send out a total of 8 data packets when they broadcast. The M1 has the capability of sending up to 8 data packets, but we send and then we wait and listen for a response back. If we don't get the acknowledgement, we would send again. Now, in the walk test mode, if you go into ELK, right arrow, 3, right arrow, walk test, when you trip a wireless sensor, first of all, the M1 is going to speak a level from that 1 to 8. Anything 5 or higher would be considered a good signal. The signal got through. We got between 5 to 8 data packets. And with the ELK Two-Way Wireless, you have the green status LED. So that too will let you know that the signal got through. So with those two test features, you can get a pretty good indication of just how well your wireless signal will work in a particular environment.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Looking over here. Okay, so we had some questions about the battery life. We talked and definitely hit a few different times about how what Brad was just saying about how our transmitters are different, and that they don't send out the 8 signals all the time during normal operation. They're just going to send out a signal, wait for acknowledgement, get it, and they stop. And so it doesn't use as much battery life as this blasting of 8 signals. So just as far as battery life is concerned, because you could see from the presentation there are different batteries that go in different units, so that's going to vary. But we're looking at anywhere from say 3 to 5 years typically. And again, of course, it matters a lot how the system's used and how frequently these sensors are being tripped, or say in the case of a keyfob, how frequently it's being used. So there's a lot of variables there, but I'd say 3 to 5 years is a fairly safe, just overall number, very generally speaking.
Exactly. If you're using the courtesy LED and the motion detector more frequently, obviously that's going to take more battery. So if it's residential versus commercial, but like Amy said, as a good rule of thumb, probably 3 to 5 years.
Okay, at this time that appears to be all the questions that have come in about two-way. I have a couple of questions that are on a different topic, and I'll follow up with those folks after the webinar. But we have a couple minutes here, so if you have a question and you just haven't typed it into us yet, now is the time. if you come up with questions after the webinar, you can definitely get a hold of us. Training@elkproducts.com will come to me, so you can answer. I can answer those questions for you. You can ask me questions about this or anything else elk related. We did have a question come in here. So we talked about our indoor motion detector, and the question is about the pet immune version of that. So that's, and help me remember here, Brad, I think that's up to 40 pounds, is that right?
I believe you're right. I think it is up to 40.
Up to
So
40
we'll have
pounds.
to confirm that. That's a good question. Let's see. I might have that here.
So yeah, that'll work for you know, definitely your smaller to average size pets. But if you have a very, very large dog, for example, that's not gonna work for you. Another question that come in, do we have a list of all the batteries that are needed for wireless products? And if you have an ELK catalog, or if you just want to look at our catalog that's available online, you will be able to find a list of all of the two-way wireless batteries. And I'm just flipping here to tell you what that's going to be on page 24 of our most current catalog, which you can find on our website. Did you, I think I've got the info on the pet immunity somewhere if you're not able to.
Nope, I did not locate it here.
Yeah, it's up to 40 pounds.
Very good.
I was able to find it. All right.
Excellent.
Okay, so if there aren't any other questions at this time, we'll go ahead and conclude the webinar. Again, we very much appreciate your time here. We hope you definitely got some helpful information from this training. We have a lot of information on our website, elkproducts.com. You can also link to our YouTube channel there, where you can find other topics that we've done trainings on like this one, so that you can watch those on demand for other subjects. Maybe you're not as familiar with M1 as a whole and you want to learn more about the control itself, or if you're wanting to dive into other peripheral products or even some of our partners, we have a lot of videos there. Definitely connect with us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. We're on all of those, and that's a good way to keep up with new stuff we have coming out, events, trade shows and trainings like this one. So we encourage you to connect with us online, and I hope everyone has a great Friday afternoon and a wonderful weekend. And I also want to thank Brad for being with us here today and doing just a super job as he always does. So thanks, Brad.
You're very welcome. Thanks everyone for attending, and we look forward to the next webinar.